We are a new production group here at MCAT. We are attempting to broadcast a progressive point of view about Missoula politics and issues. So you can see us every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. on MCAT Channel 7 in town. Today we're going to talk about the Yellowstone bison and the controversy surrounding them in regards to their winter grazing lands just outside of West Yellowstone on the National Forest. And we're going to talk to Buffalo Nations and a little bit about Buffalo Nations, which is an activist group who do battle for the bison in this conflict. Today I have two guests with me. I have Jim Cofield over here and Megan Fay. Thank you guys for coming and being here.
Thanks, you, Wendy, for having us
here.
It's great to see this, this new production on MCAT. I'm glad that we have an opportunity to speak our piece.
Yeah, thanks. Well, so tell me, both of you, how you first sort of got involved with Buffalo Nations and with the bison in Yellowstone.
Go ahead, Megan.
Okay. Let's see. I started back in '96, the winter of '96, '97. I met some people in Bozeman who were activists, and I got involved just starting reading the paper and clipping out newsprint. And then I was asked to go to take some photographs at a slaughterhouse in Sheridan, Montana at C&C Meats. And I took those photographs, and you want me to look?
It's okay.
Okay,
just keep going.
Sorry. I'm very confused by the camera thing. So I took photographs there, and let's see.
And now what are you doing?
Exactly.
What have you been doing in the last year?
In the last year, I'm an accountant for Buffalo Nations. I helped them form in Gardner, Montana, with Mike Meese.
So you were pretty much there at that conception of that.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. We were very grassroots. We didn't have a computer yet at all.
Yeah, right.
And it was really a lot of fun. So then I moved to Missoula, and I'm a little farther away, but I do go down a lot. And I've worked at the Ecology Center over the summer. I worked on the DEIS and Plan B, which is an alternative that we had besides the ones that were offered in the draft environmental impact statement. And I've been working with Cofield here on some legislation.
And so where did you come from?
Where do I come from? My history with the bison goes way back. I used to live in Livingston. Middle 80s, and I used to go down and spend a lot of time in the park. I've worked on grizzly issues, I've worked on antelope issues and other issues. And the bison became very familiar to me, out walking around, and hiking or skiing, and basically understanding what the whole greater Yellowstone ecosystem is about. And over the years, I've followed the buffalo issue. And at the Ecology Center where I'm working, we've had a bison project for many years. And for the last few years, we've really been concentrating on the management for, how are we going to deal with the problem? The federal government is trying to mandate a program of slaughter, and we've seen it over the years. Thousands of animals have just been killed.
So, what kind of activities do you see the DOL, partaking in down there?
Well, the same what they've been doing before. I mean, they want to control the buffalo populations.
So how do they do that?
They've got their capture facilities. They want to go in there
facilities.
and build these facilities and bring the animals in and test them and say, hey, these animals have brucellosis or not. And they want to take these animals, and if they got brucellosis, they want to carry them off in trucks and tractors and slaughter them.
They herd them and haze them in there, and they shoot them out in the field and in the capture facilities.
The Montana Department of Livestock's treating cattle.
Right. Okay. And what does Buffalo Nations do around Yellowstone to get in the way of the DOL activities? Do you want
They do a lot. They do morning patrols. They get up at about 5:30, 6 o'clock every day, and they head out and they find the herds of bison that have been coming out of Yellowstone, and they stay with them all day, and usually there's another patrol that comes on at about noon, and they just, if the bison move, they move, and they're in the car
They
and they're
just
on
follow 'em
radios
all
and they
day
follow
long.
them, and it's quite the event to
Okay.
partake in.
Well, right now, we're going to try to put a phone call through to Buffalo Nations and see if we can talk to them. I think I just got the signal. They're on the line here, so I'm just going to try and plug this in and pick them up. You have to bear with us.
Doing well.
This is Sarah Chalmers. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Chalmers,
That's correct, Chalmers, from Buffalo Nations, and she's on the phone down there right now, and we're just going to talk to her a little bit about what goes on down at Buffalo Nations. Can you tell me a little bit, Sarah, what the DOL has been up to, in the last couple days, today?
Today they've just been out doing reconnaissance in their truck, just one guy with his binoculars, checking out the buffalo that are on a haystack on some private land in Red Canyon, and then there's a couple buffalo in a housing area at Bear Trap, and that's about it. They were started to haze the other day, a couple days ago, at Duck Creek near their capture facility, which made us quite nervous, but they gave up when their snowmobile got stuck.
Okay, and what's the status of the Horse Butte capture facility?
That is not constructed as of yet. Buffalo Nations activists are now, as we speak, up in tripods blocking the access road to the site where they want to build the capture facility.
When you say a tripod, is that like a large enough structure that it blocks the road? What is it?
Yeah, it's there's 3 tripods up, and one tripod is made up of 3 big trees, varying in size. I guess our 3 tripods go from like 25 to 35 feet. They get bigger as you go along the road. And there's 2 activists, one in each of the last 2 tripods.
Oh.
Basically, it's 3 poles laid down on the ground, tied together, and then pushed up, and a very sturdy structure that blocks completely the road. And on each side of the road are trees, so they can't get around it.
Okay, so what have you guys been doing today specifically, but in general?
Basically, we run daily patrols that go out every day at sunrise and come in at sunset. And then there's 2 areas where we have 24-hour patrol happening.
Where is
there's
that?
about 25 to 35 volunteers here at any one time that fill these patrols, and they go out on skis, snowshoes. There's a few car patrols where you sit in your car and watch the highway for vehicles, DOL vehicles, Forest Service vehicles, cattle trailers, things like that. So people are working really hard down here, long shifts in the cold. The people at Horse Butte that are taking care of the people in the tripods are out there all day and all night. We switch shifts, give people a rest, but it's definitely tiring work.
And they're running supplies back and forth.
Right, we have Meals on Wheels, is what we call it. And our cook makes the meals and runs them out there 2 or 3 times a day.
How many bison have been killed this season, or captured, both, actually?
There have been 13 sent to slaughter,
Mm-hmm.
and I might not get this number exactly right.
That's okay.
Like 24, I think, were captured.
Yeah, around 24.
But the first that were captured, like 4 were released, and the second time they captured 10 and released 2.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. So today you're just kind of hanging out. People are out on their regular patrols.
That's correct. The weekends are usually a little more lax. We cut our patrols down to their minimum to give people a chance to rest. The DOL doesn't usually work on the weekends. Rarely, if ever, on Sunday, even though they were doing a recon today, and I'm sure they wanted to get back in time for the Super Bowl.
Right. I want to see the Super Bowl. I think I just punched my microphone. I'm sorry, guys. Well, I wanted to ask you what Missoula can do to give you some help down there? What kind of things can we do from here to help you out down there?
There's lots of things. We always need supplies.
Supplies?
Food, things like that. People come through Missoula a lot that are on their way here from Idaho or actually from Missoula. And if somebody wanted to make donations, they could contact us. And we could set up someone to pick up their donations, things like warm clothes.
Warm clothes.
We're really in desperate need of winter boots, just
Winter
snow boots,
boots.
Sorels.
Mm-hmm.
When I get new people from Tennessee, I'm having a hard time keeping their feet warm because I'm out of warm boots. Bread, we always need bread, and volunteers. We do have a lot of people from Missoula that just come down for 2 or 3 days when they have their days off, or students on the weekends. We call them our weekend warriors, and they're a vital part of this operation. They let people get a rest on the weekends. And if anybody wants to volunteer, they can give us a call down here and find out what it's about. And, you know, it would be a great help.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about how a person might make monetary donations to Buffalo Nations?
Yes, they can. That would be a tax-deductible donation, and they could send it to Buffalo Nations, P.O. Box 957,
Okay.
West
I think we have
Yellowstone,
it on
Montana, 59758.
Okay.
And then they could, if they need a receipt, we'll just send that to them upon their request.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about this Buffalo Legal Defense Fund?
Yes, that is a fund that we're setting up separately from our regular account, because it wouldn't be a tax-deductible donation, because it would help people who were practicing civil disobedience out in the
Right.
field, like the people we have out there right now, to be bailed out of jail, for legal funds, for support, and for supplies that we need for the tripods.
Okay. And that should also be mailed to Buffalo Nations at that same address. Can we see that on this screen? Yeah, thanks. That's the same address?
That's correct, but I believe the check should be made out to Buffalo Defense Fund,
Buffalo
other than
Legal
Buffalo
Defense
Nation.
Fund. Okay. And if we do get any volunteers down there, they can expect shelter and food and dinner and.
That's correct. All the meals are provided and usually prepared for the volunteers.
And they're good too, because I've been there.
They're really good. We have a great cook.
And free lodging and everything.
Yes, we have a cabin here, and it's equipped with bunks. And if we get overcrowding, you sometimes have to sleep on the floor, but we definitely put you up and keep you warm. And we also have the field teepee out at Horse Butte and another teepee here if there's overcrowding. So
Okay.
if somebody wanted to get an idea of what that's like in the middle of winter, they'd be free to do that as well.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question, Wendy.
Jim would like to ask you a question, Sarah.
All
Sarah?
right.
I heard today that the National Park Service has started hazing buffalo outside of the West Yellowstone entrance. Can you tell me a little bit more about what's going on there?
Are you sure it's West Yellowstone? I thought
That's what the paper in Missoula was reporting today. That the Park Service had started to haze animals outside of West Yellowstone.
Yeah, we haven't seen any of that today. We've had a roving patrol out, and I honestly, that's the first I heard of it happening in West Yellowstone.
False rumor.
They hazed yesterday.
See?
Where?
You never know.
On
Who
the
you
north
believe.
end, they hazed yesterday. The Park Service did.
Okay, well, thank you, Sarah, for joining us, and thanks to everybody who's doing work down there and getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, day after day. It's really important, and you've been really patient waiting for us to get set up here, so thanks a lot for joining
Thank you,
us.
Wendy.
Uh-huh.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you later, Sarah.
So I need to get rid of that. Good. Okay. So you want to unplug it too in case we get a phone call in? So is there, did you guys feel like you need to add anything to that or comment on that at all? Did you feel like that was pretty complete? I know that I wanted to say, you know, I went down, I've got somebody giving me some signals that I don't understand, so I'm just going to keep talking. I went down there last year one time, and it was really fun. I just, you know, we got up at 5, and that's ridiculous, but you'd never do that unless someone was you know, making you. And what we did was went out and watched the sunrise on cross-country skis, and we skied like 5 miles in this great deep snow and watched the sun come up, and it was really an amazing way to spend a weekend. There were so many people there. They were friendly and welcoming, and there was great food, and I would recommend anyone do it, even just for a vacation, even if you didn't, you know, even if you didn't have some, you know, real strong activist urge. It's just a great time. Do you guys want to say anything else too?
When was the last time you were down there, Megan?
About 2 weeks ago, and it was nice. It was really nice. There was a lot of people, and Mike Bowersox from Seeds of Peace does a really good job at, there you are, making meals, and they've got all types of radio gear. So if you're experienced in radio, it's really good to know. And we have a 2-way radio and other camera and whatever. I can't.
You can talk to me. That works too.
I can't handle that
That's
anymore.
fine. You can just talk to me.
No, it was fun. It was a good time. They are real nervous right now with that facility going in at Horse Butte, which I've also been
We should talk a little bit
working
more about
on.
what that is for everybody. Do you want to say a little bit about that, Jim? Just describe the situation surrounding the Horse Butte.
Well, the
capture
Horse
facility.
Butte capture facility has just been, it's one of these actions that comes out of the greater plan for what the state and what the feds are trying to do with the buffalo situation. And what everybody's doing down there at the Horse Butte, they've got the tripods set up, they've got some roads blocked, and they're just making sure that if the state Department of Livestock comes in and tries to start constructing the facility, and what this facility will do, it's set up to capture and test, and if the animals test positive for brucellosis, they're going to haul them out to slaughter. What they're trying to do is just shut it down. You know, it's basically one of these situations. The state wants to do this, the federal government is willing to let them do that, and the activists are out there in the field. They've got the tripods set up, they've got people up in those tripods, they've got all the support that they need, and they're going to shut it down however they can. And if it takes getting arrested, that's what it's going to be. We've already had quite a few people arrested at actions centering around the whole thing.
Yeah,
and it's going to happen again.
The Legal Defense Fund.
Yeah.
Right. And also, I think it's true that this capture facility is being built on some bald eagle nesting ground, and there are some real sketchy, close to legal violations going on with the building of the facility. It's pretty sketchy legally. So, good work to all those guys down there who are trying to get in the way of them. You know, it means a lot to the bison. I think we're gonna.
Do you want to talk about the bald eagle for a minute?
Do you want to? Go ahead.
Do you want to say something, Megan?
Do you
or
want
me
to?
Go ahead, I'll just add on whatever.
You know, this whole idea of bald eagle nesting it's a whole other thing. It's like the Forest Service doesn't seem to care about other wildlife species. You know, it's like, well, we got a problem here. You know, it's like we got this brucellosis thing. We got too many buffalo. Who cares what they really want, what they're thinking about? You know, they want to put this capture facility in this area right where we've got, you know, these bald eagles are nesting. It's the most beautiful space. You know, you're right there on the southeast arm of Hebgen Lake, and they've got these nests up there, these bald eagles. You know, this is where they have. This is what they have. This is the only land that they have. And the federal government is willing to take and put this capture facility within less than a mile of this capture facility. It's ridiculous. It's insane. You know, we can discuss it and we can throw all these words around, whatever. It's crazy.
Okay, well, I think we're going to go to some footage which we've received from Buffalo Nations and Cold Mountain Cold Rivers. Thank you very much. We're going to see some hazing activities, and I think now we can pretty much go to that. Can we see that, please? Okay, I think here it comes. Yeah. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, we're in West Yellowstone now,
Yeah, this is
down in the
West.
Hebgen Valley.
Right. Okay, and those are some bison.
Yeah, what we're going
walking
to see
across
here
the
is
screen.
some people off on the side through the trees, moving the animals through the woods. You'll see how they're all kind of moving off to the left.
Yeah.
And what we're doing here is what they are trying to do here is moving them back into Yellowstone National
Okay.
Park.
This shot right here is a good example of how bison try to get their winter feeding source, and they burrow down with their noses just like that, and you'll watch them do that for hours. I have in West Yellowstone trying to get to the good grass that lies underneath the snow. And something that happened in '97 that was unfortunate is that the snow started to melt, and so an icy layer formed, so they weren't able to burrow down with their noses and eat everything, and they had to go further out of the park.
It warmed up and then it cooled off again and had a big ice layer form.
So the bison graze mostly in the wintertime. Are they known to come down to the lower elevations in the national forest?
Yeah,
in
that's
the spring and summer
that's
also?
yeah.
The movement of the bison in the wintertime is a natural migration pattern where they head to the lower lands where the snow is lower. And what we're seeing here now is the Department of Livestock is hazing buffalo back over the border. This fence line here is the border between private land and the National Park Service. On the left hand is the park. And they're coming up with the snowmobiles and just basically pushing the animals
This is at the
over
Duck
fence.
Creek facility.
And you see the gun there, what they have is what you call cracker barrels, where is a blank, a rifle shooting a blank. And it's just basically shooting off a loud noise and scaring the
them,
animals
yeah.
away. Right here, we're looking at some private land where the DOL has actually come in and trying to haze animals through some private areas, and the Department of Livestock doesn't even bother to come in and
Get permission?
they don't get permission at all
They just
to move the
trespass.
animals across private land. They just do what they want to do. They come and they go, and a lot of people get really upset at this. And one, it's really dangerous. I mean, you got a 7-year-old kid, and they're out there in your backyard playing. All of a sudden, the DOL comes through, and they're stampeding a herd of
with
buffalo.
cracker
It's
barrels.
deadly with cracker barrels.
And
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
stampeding bison. And they have been known to shoot them on the private lands also, haven't they?
They have definitely gone onto private land and killed animals. Hey, look at this guy here. I mean, this is your
Lone Ranger.
the Lone Ranger. You know, this is right out of the Old West.
This shot just. And they won't even if they come and shoot an animal, they don't necessarily get permission from the owners all the time.
They don't, not at all.
And
The Department of Livestock really believes that they can come and go where they want, whether it's public land, private land, state land, and do what they need to do in their terms.
yeah.
They think that they have this right to come and go as they please. And it's wrong.
Would you do me a favor and just point out on this map? We have a map behind us here. You were talking about their migration patterns. Would you point out sort of, here, you can use this pen, that'll make it easier for you.
Okay, well, we have Yellowstone National Park here. Here's Yellowstone Lake, Fishing Bridge. This is West Yellowstone, and this is Gardner. And what we have is a large movement of animals out of the park this way. This is Hebgen Lake, and then moving south into Grand Teton National Park and moving north up the Yellowstone Valley or down the Yellowstone Valley here.
Right.
Where we're looking at all this action right now is
all-
right here along the park border. We have Duck Creek right here. We have the Madison Valley here. We've got Stevens Creek here and West Yellowstone here.
Right.
The main action for the state is to push the animals back across this border.
And that's wearying to the animals. That's threatening to them. Even just the hazing and herding is threatening, isn't it?
Well, yeah, basically, it's not only threatening to their lives, but also it causes them to go through too much snow, and they're totally wiped out by the time that they go over into the public land or private land that's outside of the park right there. And I mean, they're tired, they're hungry. That's why they're coming out of the park. And
right.
now people they want it every day. If the DOL
have to
wanted to,
expend
they
that-
would haze them back every day, and they
to
don't.
expend that
Obviously, they
energy.
don't do that, and
Interfere.
we see them come across, and then they'd go back and come across, and that right there, that's a lot of energy that they should be storing up for springtime because they have to calve in the springtime and they need that extra food and layers of fat in their system. So.
Okay. You had sort of answered this question, I think, but I wasn't really clear. Do we see bison outside of the park in the national forest in the late spring and in the summertime, or is it mostly just a winter grazing area?
Yeah, because Yellowstone National Park isn't just their main habitat. The whole ecosystem is their habitat.
So they roam
And
pretty.
they could go, you know, if the herd was as big as it should be, which they haven't done a proper analysis of the carrying capacity of the ecosystem yet, but that herd could extend down into the valleys of, you know, the Madison Valley, the Paradise Valley, which is where the Yellowstone flows through up north into
The Snake River
Livingston,
Valley.
and yeah, the Snake River Valley, and it's there. You know, we don't see as many as we should be seeing in those valleys in the summer and springtime. We see some that have their calves there, but not as many as there should be.
The main problem that we see right now is that the state of Montana does not believe that there should be wild buffalo in the state of Montana. They believe that the problem is that the National Park Service does not keep the buffalo within their parks boundaries. And so, you know, these animals are coming across, and the state's going, keep them back on that side. And the National Park Service is going, hey, their year's half the year also. So, you know, what are we going to do?
Has anybody taken a very reliable count of the population recently?
We do flyovers. Buffalo Nations does flyovers with Project Lighthawk, and those are somewhat accurate. You can't get the whole herd because you got a lot of bison. Like now with the Northern Range herd, with the kind of handling that they went through with the facility on that end of the park, that herd doesn't like to be in the valley anymore because they're scared that officials are going to come get them. So they stay in the trees a lot and they stay away from humans because of the activity they've had in the past. So, yeah, it's hard. Mary Marr, the park biologist, does some counts that are probably as accurate as the ones that we do, but no one else has done any studies of population
what
or
is the
carrying
number? Did you say that?
capacities.
I'm sorry, did I miss that? Do you have any?
The
What is the
herd
number?
now?
What are the counts? What kind of counts are you getting?
I don't even know, Jim.
I haven't heard any recent counts
Don't
at all.
know.
Is it over 2,000? Do you think?
I would say somewhere around 2,000, give or take 100 animals. One of the things that we're doing right now, we'll talk about this a little later with some legislation we have pending. The Montana State Legislature is doing a range and population study. How many animals are there? How many animals do we want to see in the state of Montana? How far are we going to let these animals roam in Montana? It's a big question, and it's open for controversy. We'd like to see all the public lands in the area basically open for the buffalo. It's public land. It was there for elk to graze, for deer to graze, for antelope, all these other animals. Why not buffalo?
Yeah.
And until the Montana State Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks opens up their eyes and the governor allows them to do so, we don't have a clue. Nobody knows. We can speculate, we can talk about animals, but we're going to make them. We're going to make them open up and talk about it.
Good. We're gonna go now also to some more footage of the hazing and capture activities. This is pretty rough. It's not pleasant to watch.
Don't let your kids watch
Yeah,
it.
it's really sad, and I guess I almost want to apologize for it, but I feel like it's necessary. So, if we can, we're gonna try to get that on now for you. Can we see that? Let's see. In the meantime, you were talking about, oh, there we go. We're looking at it now.
We're doing a prayer to the four winds here.
Yeah. You were talking about the deer and the other animals that are around there. And this controversy sort of erupted around the disease brucellosis. And as far as I understand, deer, elk, and moose all carry brucellosis. And I wonder what, if anything, the DOL is doing about the elk and the deer.
Well, that's the big problem right now. The federal government and the state of Montana just entered into an environmental impact statement on buffalo management in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Unfortunately, they chose to focus that study on bison management and not brucellosis. Brucellosis is a prevalent disease in the area. In fact, it was brought there by cattle in the early 20th century when the cattle barons started bringing their herds in. You know,
Do you see any activities being conducted to monitor the elk and the?
none at all. You know, it's one of these things where in the EIS, they basically came out and said they weren't going to look at all
Yeah.
these other wildlife species. And in the interim bison management plan, which the state is using to justify its actions that we're seeing here now, they don't want to look at other species. You know,
It's
until
interesting because I think wasn't the one case of transmission from the wild animals to cattle, wasn't it from an elk, or it wasn't a bison anyway?
It's one of these things where if you take enough animals and you put them in a small enough space where you can force a transmission of brucellosis from one species to another. In the wild, we don't understand how brucellosis vectors across the different
Yellowstone
wildlife
buffalo are
species
special.
in the greater Yellowstone system.
They're the descendants
We
of
don't
the few
understand it
survivors
at
of the
all.
mass slaughter
And
of
the
last
studies that
century.
the federal government and the state have put
Yellowstone
before us
buffalo are the
do nothing
oldest
to address that
free-roaming
question.
wild-
They make a foregone conclusion that brucellosis is a problem, therefore we're going to deal with it. I don't know how they can justify the conclusions that they're drawing when you've got elk, you've got deer, you've got antelope, you've got who knows what other wildlife species in the area also vectoring brucellosis.
Right, it just doesn't make any sense.
I think I should have been.
One of my, actually, you know what, it looks like we're gonna go here pretty quick to we're gonna go hear Al Jensen, who's a rancher at West Yellowstone.
The Lamar Valley I was talking about
By
earlier, the Northern Range herd by Gardner. And this was the winter of '97 with the hazing going on. They obviously, you can see that they used
Running
trucks.
them all
And
around.
there's that one guy on the back there.
Here he
State
is.
of Montana just came in here and slaughtered a bunch of buffalo within 100 yards of my house and didn't have the decency to even knock on the door. He informed me I still got horses over there. I don't know if they're cut up or not. Haven't got that far yet. Yeah, they're pretty spooked. They get, well, you know, there was probably 15 to 18 shots there. Sounded like the 4th of July.
Yeah, that's just, we're getting to the ugly stuff. It's hard for me
And
to
this
watch
goes back to this is at the same facility by Gardner. This facility is actually located inside Yellowstone National Park, and kind of goes against some of their policies that they have. Yeah, this is the one of the
it's awful.
separating pins that they have.
They just get so agitated. It's interesting that
And
guy.
This one has he has a
wound.
cut on the side right there.
He
One of the
looks
things
like
they
he's
try to-
kind of trying to help him out, his friend.
They try to say that their capture and testing operations never
Are
result
safe.
in any kind of injuries and whatnot. And that's obviously not true.
Obviously, yeah. It's really interesting that, this controversy sort of sits around the cattle industry, the beef industry versus the bison or whatever. And we've got this rancher here who's just obviously totally opposed to it, on a personal level, on the individual level. I think that's interesting, and I wonder why, who is ignoring him and why a little bit, Oh, I hate these.
What do you mean, who's ignoring?
Like, the DOL theoretically represents ranchers' interests, I would suppose, and you've got these ranchers on an individual basis who are just not into this.
Well, it's really
policy.
obvious that what's happening here is that the Department of Livestock is using traditional cattle ranching techniques to manage a wildlife population. The buffalo in Yellowstone, it's a wild population. They've been wild in perpetuity. What we're seeing here is the last remaining wild, free-roaming herd of buffalo in Yellowstone
Yeah.
being treated like cattle.
And just
And
having a head.
the people that are here that are doing this, they realize this. I mean, they know they're not dealing with cows, and they know they're not dealing with domestic cattle. And you know, this scene here
animal
has
is
got to be
just
one of the
the
most
most tragic.
powerful, moving pieces of film I've ever
Just-
seen. And I have to turn my
Not
eyes.
really look at it. I know I
every time I
still
watch
can't.
it.
It's awful. I'm just gonna sit here for a minute and let people watch this, I think.
This is what slaughter is all about.
Yeah, it's really wretched.
This is what the cattle industry does, and this is how we treat cattle and how we treat other animals.
And this is all in Sheridan, Montana, so they would be shipped about, I think it's about 50 or 60 miles, it might be a little bit more.
To get this,
To get these animals from Yellowstone
Yellowstone to
National
this
Park
place
to a
where they
private
do this.
facility where they would be killed and shot.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of miles to carry, cover. And
to
they're-
go to your gas
you're a
chamber.
wild animal and you're locked in a little tiny horse trailer. I mean,
They're just scared. You
What
can
I'd like to
see.
say about this also is that these animals that are shipped off to slaughter do not necessarily have the disease brucellosis. They have only tested positive in a very simplistic field test, of which is probably about 20% effective in whether or not this animal actually has brucellosis or not. So it's kind of like going out and saying, have you ever had the flu or not? You know, I give you a test. If you've got the flu, I'd kill you. Or have you ever, have you ever been exposed to the AIDS virus? If you have, oh, I'm going to take you off and sacrifice you. It's the same mentality.
Yeah, it's not even as threatening. I don't think. I don't know as AIDS even. And we don't.
Brucellosis is not a deadly disease, and the federal
We're gonna,
government has set it
and
up
I
so
don't want
that
to cut you off, but we're going to hear General Sheridan here give us.
These men have done in the last 2 years more to settle the vexed Indian question than the entire regular army has done in the last 30 years. They are destroying the Indians' commissary, and it is a well-known fact that an army losing its base of supplies is placed at a great disadvantage. Let them kill, skin, and sell until the buffaloes are exterminated. Then your prairies can be covered with speckled cattle.
Involved in the bison slaughter policies, I suppose, in the around the turn of the century.
you want to say something about this scene here, maybe?
yeah,
Why
this
don't
scene
you?
was in, this was the first National Day of Prayer back in '97, in April '97, and that was in front of the facility on the northern entrance of the park by Gardner.
Currently, right now, there is a large pilgrimage of Native Americans from the Black Hills getting ready to embark on February 6th or 7th and walk through the winter to Yellowstone National Park to protest the treatment of the herd, but also as a real chance for them to center their cultural beliefs around their relationship with the buffalo.
Yeah.
And what we saw here was kind of the initiation of that.
Yeah, which I think is really interesting because there's a historical relationship between the Native Americans and the slaughter of the bison, and I think a lot of times that's somewhat overlooked, and it's a really interesting motive, a possible motive in my eyes, the relationship between the Native Americans traditionally and the slaughter of the bison. And I wanted to get someone here, someone from one of the tribes to come and speak to us. I wasn't able to, but I wonder, you've had some interaction with Rosalie Little Thunder, I know, down at Buffalo Nations, and I'm interested to hear what your observations of their experiences related to this.
Well, I don't think that's something for me to answer. I don't know. I don't want to answer that. So
It's very hard for us as Western environmentalists to approach the question of tribal relationships with the buffalo, cultural, traditional relationships. It's one of the things that we've been dealing with ongoing for years and years with this issue down in West Yellowstone. And I think that in one sense it tends to bring us together, back together, in that the United States used the slaughter of the buffalo as a way to suppress the Native Americans and to put down a way of life and a culture. And what we see today is the remnants of that same attitude, that same 19th century Stone Age philosophy that Mark Roscoe, our governor, is perpetuating, and the federal government isn't doing much to do away with. And so we are finding a struggle right now to bring traditional cultures and, what do you want to call us, the new immigrants to this area, back to an understanding of how are we going to deal with wildlife? How are we going to provide for wild buffalo in this bioregion? And it's a tough question, and it's tough not just from environmental groups, one group talking to another, or tribes, one tribe talking to another tribe, tribes talking to environmentalists. It's tough and it's hard, and we're doing our best that we can to bridge those gaps and do the right thing for the buffalo and for the traditional Native Americans and for ourselves as immigrants in this country.
Let me just take a peek down here. I just want to see if there's anything we really should cover. Let's see. Can you tell me a little bit about APHIS? What is APHIS and what role do they play in this? Do you feel prepared to answer that?
You want to talk about APHIS?
Sure. APHIS is the Animal Plant and Health Inspection Service, which is run by the federal government, and basically their job is to classify each state as brucellosis free or not. Whether APHIS is involved because supposedly a disease is involved and that threatens the livestock industry, so they brought in APHIS. And APHIS is originally supposed to be for the cattle industry, who they eradicated the disease out of many of the cattle herds in the states. And so APHIS was brought in because of the bison and them being infected with it. And their job is to see if brucellosis is really a big problem, to see if there's what types of risks are involved, and how they should handle the situation so no other domestic animals are infected with disease, so that because Montana is now a brucellosis-free status state, and they've eradicated all the disease out of their cattle herds. So if it was to be reinfected, then there would be all these monies involved to
Sanctions.
go back, and sanctions. We wouldn't be able to ship our cattle interstate, interstate, and so.
It seems to me that the sort of federal APHIS position about disease control as it relates to the bison is not the same as the state policy. So what are the differences between the two?
Well,
And
once again, we're looking at the dance between federal and state regulations and requirements and what's going to happen. APHIS basically sets forward a standard
for health,
for brucellosis.
for disease control.
And what brucellosis, what their interest in brucellosis is that they don't want to see cattle herds in other states being impacted by the disease.
Right.
The problem is that we have a wildlife population in Montana and in Wyoming and partially in Idaho that does have this disease. Whether or not it can pass it on to cattle or not is a subject for scientific debate.
Right.
It's APHIS's role to set forth some kind of a framework
Standard.
where we can look at this and manage this risk. And right now, APHIS has given us what they call a definition of low-risk buffalo, which for brucellosis terms means that any buffalo other than a pregnant female is not a risk animal. It means that that animal cannot transmit the disease to cattle. And
Can you explain that a little?
brucellosis is a disease that is transmitted. It's kind of a reproductive disease. I don't want to gloss over it here too quickly, but it is a disease that can be passed through the afterbirth of a cow when she gives birth to her calves, and she has the afterbirth material
Right,
laying
okay,
there.
so-
It is a bacterial disease that can be passed on to another animal at that point only.
Okay, so, all
Um,
right.
So it is the pregnant females immediately during and after they have given birth where they are at some kind of a risk of passing the disease on to another animal. Well, we've got a couple things going on here. One, the buffalo in Yellowstone go back into the park before they give birth. There's never been an incidence
Right.
where buffalo have given birth outside of the park. Two, there are never cattle in the greater Yellowstone area during this period of birth or even within 30 to 60 days. So what APHIS has said is that given a 30 to 60 day window of separation in time between the two species of animals, buffalo and cattle, on the same piece of land, they can't transmit the disease. So say we've got cattle coming into these grounds somewhere around the 1st of June, give or take a couple weeks. The buffalo have all moved back into the park.
Right.
The buffalo that are giving birth have all moved back into the park. There's no opportunity for the two to mingle together and
'Cause
to have any potential to transmit
Their
the disease.
birthing period is in the late winter months?
The
early
buffalo
spring?
give birth in the late winter months.
So,
Yeah,
right.
somewhere between March if it's an easy winter and into May if it's
And
a
when do
really
the
late
cattle
winter.
start grazing there?
The
on those
earliest you would
lands?
see cattle in these areas is the 1st of June to the middle of June, sometimes even the 1st of July, depending on the
So you've-
severity of the winter.
You have,
So what we have is the APHIS has one definition of what a low-risk buffalo is. The state of Montana having another definition, not willing to accept APHIS's definition. So the state is not willing to say, hey, you know, these animals are not going to transmit the disease to our cows. They're going, we don't even want to have the perception
right.
that we can transmit brucellosis. And this whole thing is just all predicated
So
around the notion that they do not want other states around the country putting sanctions on the cattle industry in Montana.
Which they can't
perception.
do, really. Can they do that even?
They can't do that.
I have here that they've tried several times and APHIS has interfered and always been successful in interfering with those sanctions.
APHIS has been pretty good in the last couple of years about mediating between other states
Other
that want to put
states.
sanctions on the state of Montana for brucellosis transmission and the state of Montana.
I want to use some time here to talk about this new legislation that you've been authoring. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you just describe it a little bit? And I really don't know anything about it, so I'd just like to hear.
Well,
What you
most
have to
most
say.
people don't know anything about it because it's not public yet. We've been working on some draft legislation with the Montana State Legislature in the House for the '99 legislative session. And what's going on is that we decided that it was time to take it to the people of the state of Montana. All the bison policy and all the federal management, all the state management has been happening out of the public arena. There has recently been the environmental impact statement on buffalo management in Yellowstone and Montana that generated so much interest, and they generated 65,000 comments on the plan. The comment period just closed on that not too long ago, 3-4 months ago. And what that plan did is it said, okay, how are the federal agencies and state going to come together and manage the buffalo? Well, unfortunately, that whole plan was designed, we believe, by the federal government and the state to fracture interest. It was serving to split environmental group against environmental group, tribe against tribe, Native Americans against non-Native Americans, ranchers against citizens of the state. And what we have been left with is a position where people don't know where to turn. They don't know where to come back and find a center ground where we can all focus on and rally around that's going to end this needless slaughter of the buffalo in Yellowstone.
So when will we potentially see this piece of legislation in Helena?
This legislation is written. We are waiting right now to introduce it when we have all of our witnesses together, when we think that the time's right. Basically, the legislation we have written has 4 main elements. And the first element is that we want to see the state transfer management of buffalo from the Department of Livestock to the Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. We don't believe that buffalo should be treated like cattle. We feel they should be treated like wildlife, like any other animal. We're going to mandate that the state follows APHIS's definition of low-risk buffalo, meaning that the state should not manage any animals that are not at risk for transmitting disease, and this means that no longer will we have bulls, calves, females that aren't pregnant,
Who may
being
test
shipped off to
positive,
slaughter.
but
Who
are
may
not,
test slaughter.
are not really capable of transmitting.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
The state right now has a policy that any animal that tests positive
Right,
slaughter is going to
and-
be hauled off to
Right,
slaughter.
and it's just not, yeah.
We have another piece of the bill is going to say that we don't want any animals to be sold, whether live animals or slaughtered animals. We've seen in the past that the Department of Livestock has taken animals that have been slaughtered and they have sold it and used that money to further their hazing operations or their quarantine operations or their capture facilities and all this, and we don't think that's right.
Okay.
And then the last thing that we want to do is that we want the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that we've mandated through this legislation to manage buffalo to look at population and range. You know, we want the state of Montana to accept wild buffalo in Montana.
And you have to be monitoring populations to manage them with any kind of intelligence.
We have to have an idea. Right now, we see a situation where the state is using brucellosis as a smokescreen to manage for population.
Right.
And so if we didn't have the brucellosis problem, if we had 3,000 animals come out of Yellowstone, they'd be trying to kill them anyway. That's what they did back in the early 90s. And so what we're trying to do is say, how far can we allow the buffalo to roam in Montana? How many animals can we have on that land? And once we can have some idea
We can do
of
a much
accepting
better
these
job.
animals, then we can start coming up with an idea to manage it. And one of the problems we've had is that, okay, you've got so many animals, how are you going to manage them? You want to have a hunt, you want to have the Department of Livestock have capture facilities and whatnot. And our whole point is that these bison, this buffalo, are remnants of the last free-roaming herd of this nation. This is the one herd that still exists from the great herds of
Yeah.
40, 50, 60 million animals or more back in the 1800s. And over history, many Native American tribes have had different sorts of agreements with the federal government, whether through treaties or through management agreements or whatnot, and how we're going to manage this one herd. And we have right now 9 different tribes that have agreements with Yellowstone National Park on how to manage buffalo. The state of Montana doesn't
We need
recognize that.
to consolidate.
Let me just say one more thing.
Yeah.
Our legislation says that the state of Montana, the Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, has to sit down with the tribes and agree on a management strategy. We're not saying that we're going to have a hunt. We're not going to say that we have to take animals off to slaughter. We're not saying that we're going to let animals overrun private land.
Okay.
What we're saying is that the government has to sit down and have an intelligent conversation
About how to deal with this.
with how to deal with
Right,
it.
okay.
Exactly.
Well, thanks a lot for doing that. Which camera am I on? Yeah, thanks. I want to just put some information back up on the screen real briefly. Thanks, Jim and Megan, for coming down and talking to us. If you would like to help out, one of the things you can do is write the governor. That will generate support for legislation. So I wonder if we can see on the screen that address to write the governor. There we go. At the state capitol, Helena, Montana, 59620. You can call him 406-44 646-434-3111 or 1-800-523-3162. The other things you can do is go down to Buffalo Nations and volunteer your time. Can we see that information also, please? You want to call Sarah Chalmers at Buffalo Nations, 406-646-0070, and she will help you out arranging carpooling, transportation to get down there. The other thing you can do is send donations either to Buffalo Nations itself or to the Buffalo Nations Legal Defense Fund. Here's the Buffalo Nations address. This is a tax-deductible donation, and you want to make your checks payable to Buffalo Nations itself. The Buffalo Legal Defense Fund is the same address, but these are not tax-deductible donations, and you need to make those checks payable to the Buffalo Legal Defense Fund. Oh, I dropped my
Can I say a
pen.
quick thing about the defense fund?
Sure. Just real quick, we're almost
We've
out
had
of time.
5 people arrested already. We have a great crew of attorneys in Bozeman, and there are going to be many more arrests this winter. Any help that we can have for these folks would be just greatly appreciated.
And also, as Sarah had mentioned, we could really use supplies, clothes, especially boots, bread, and volunteers. So if you want to donate some supplies, you can also just contact her there at that same number. Maybe we can see it one more time. This is the number. If you don't know what to do and you want to help, call 406-646-0070. And they'll help you figure out what you can do. That's basically all we have. I'm really excited. Did I forget something? Oh, I need to talk about next week. Next week we're going to have a show about otter wing. I think the following week we have a living wage show again, and we'll be here for the next, 9 shows left? Something like that. 9 Sundays or so at 8 p.m. every week, and I hope you'll join us again. We want to thank MCAT for giving us the opportunity to use their studio. It's been terrific learning this stuff, and they've been really helpful. So thanks again. Thanks you guys, and thanks to all the volunteers down at Buffalo Nations. Bison, love you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Wendy.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.